In tonight's video, we are going to be comparing two of the most popular gaming laptops of 2022, the Alienware X17 R2 versus the new Legion 7i, to help you decide which is worthy of being your next gaming laptop. We're going to be comparing the build quality, the features, the upgradability, the performance, and much, much more. So grab some popcorn because these two are going to go at it. So first things first, I want to talk about the specs of both these machines we're comparing. Now we wanted to try and keep this as fair as possible, so we've ordered the high-end models for each. Now both retail at about £4,000 in the UK, but as always you never pay full retail price on either a Dell or a Lenovo system because there's always discount codes or offers available. So both these systems come with the same RTX 3080 Ti with a 175 watt TGP. They've both got 32GB of RAM, a 1TB Gen 4 SSD, but the Legion 7i has the new i9 12900HX CPU, which is a 16-core CPU with 24 threads. Now the Alienware X17 R2 has the i9 but the 12900HK. Now this only has 14 cores and 20 threads. Other than that, the only other difference we've really got is the actual screens on these machines. Now the Alienware X17 R2 is a 17-inch and we've got the 4K 120Hz screen here. And the Legion has a 16-inch screen with a 16p 165Hz panel. With these machines side by side, obviously the Alienware's could be a bigger laptop with its 17-inch screen over the Legion's 16-inch screen. But when I put the Legion on top of the Alienware X17, you can just see how much smaller the Legion 7 is over the Alienware X17. Lenovo have managed to make a really compact chassis with the Legion, making it a much more compact laptop that's a lot more portable. And if you're someone that's always on the move, this can make a big difference. Build quality wise, Lenovo have really come out fighting this year. The laptop looks a lot more refined than last year and has a lot less plastics in this build. This makes it feel a lot more durable and a lot more premium. But I still have to give the build quality win to the Alienware though. The X17 R2 is built like an absolute tank and it feels incredibly premium with no flex or wobble. It's an absolutely solid machine. Looking at the ports on both of these laptops, they both have a great selection of ports. The Alienware has a mini DisplayPort and a microSD card slot, which the Legion doesn't, but the Legion has an extra Thunderbolt 4 port and an extra USB-C port than the Alienware. But an area that I prefer the Legion over the Alienware is the actual layout of the ports. The Alienware has all of its actual ports at the rear of the machine. Now this does make the machine look very tidy with all the cables coming out of the back, but if you're somebody that's plugging things in and out of your laptop, like drives, mice and keyboards, etc., it's a real pain having to either turn the laptop round or look around the back of the machine to find the port that you need. The Legion, on the other hand, has most of the ports on the back, but it keeps some of the actual USB-C ports on either side, making it easier if you're plugging in external devices in and out on the machine. And also, at the rear of the machine, the ports have lit symbols above them, so it's very easy to find the port that you want when you just look over the back of the lid. And talking of those lights, that leads us neatly onto the RGB on both of these machines, and both do it in style. Now the Legion, as well as those rear lit ports, we also get the lit logo on the lids, a per key RGB keyboard, and this beautiful RGB strip that runs right around the actual base of the actual machine, which puts lovely RGB lighting down onto your desk. The Alienware, on the other hand, also has the per key RGB keyboard. It has a lit alien head on the top of the laptop, and it also has a lit alien head power button, and we also get that gorgeously vibrant Tron ring around the rear of the machine. That's something I've always absolutely loved. It's iconic with this Alienware design. Now, as we mentioned the RGB on these keyboards, let's quickly compare them. Although they are both per key RGB keyboards, the Alienware only lights the primary functions, and that's a real shame. This is only something that's happened in the last couple of years. The Legion, on the other hand, the primary and the secondary functions are lit, making it a better RGB keyboard in my opinion. Also, the Legion has a full-size keyboard with number pads, yet the larger Alienware has no number pad and the cursor keys crushed into the keyboard. And considering this is an actual bigger laptop chassis, that's a real shame comparing these two together. But when it comes to the actual typing experience, it's a hands down win to the Alienware. I absolutely love this Alienware's keyboard. It's one of the best typing experience on any gaming laptop out there. Now looking at the trackpads below the keyboards, both of these machines have great trackpads. They both work flawlessly, the gestures work well. But between the two, I do prefer the feel of the Alienware X17 R2's trackpad. It feels a little bit more solid and premium, whereas the Legion's has a little bit of play and a little bit of a hollow sound when you click it. It's only minor, you probably wouldn't notice unless you had them both together, but of the two, I do prefer the Alienware. And moving on to the speakers on these machines sound like this. Okay, sound test of the Legion 7i versus the X17 R2. Both laptops are at 80% volume. We're going to start with the Legion. Alienware. to the Legion. And lastly, back to the Alienware. Well, I think that's pretty much an easy win for the Alienware, but let me know in the comments down below what you think. And then as we move up to the screen, obviously the Alienware has the bigger screen, but not only does it have a bigger screen, it has a 4K panel on this machine. Now you can also configure it with 1080p and QHD now, so you have more options with the Alienware, but this 4K 120Hz panel is absolutely gorgeous. It's bright, it's vibrant, it's still responsive with 120Hz, and it scales well, so you can run games at a non-native resolution and they still look great. Moving over to the Legion, at the moment there's only one option available, and that's the 2560 by 1600 16:10 screen, which is a great resolution, and the 16:10 aspect ratio is great if you're also doing work as well as play. It's also 500 nits of brightness, which is even brighter than the actual Alienware. It's 165Hz, so it's very fast, but obviously comparing it to the Alienware, it's not quite as pixel dense. But if I'm honest, the Legion panel is probably a better all-around panel, but the X17 R2 is just slightly more beautiful in this 4K version. Moving above the screens, the Alienware has a 720p webcam, and the Legion has a 1080p webcam. They look like this. And this is the 1080p webcam and microphones on the Lenovo Legion 7i for 2022. This is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the Alienware X17 R2. Now on the Alienware, built into the webcam, we've also got Windows Hello facial recognition. This is my favourite way of logging into this laptop. It's quick, it's convenient, and it's accurate. I absolutely love this on the Alienware. Now the Legion, this year, we don't get facial recognition, but we do at least get Windows Hello fingerprint reader built into the actual power button. And that does work incredibly well. Obviously, it's not quite as convenient as facial recognition, but it's a really good alternative. But when the machine is running full throttle, the top of that laptop does get very hot, so you are going to get a bit of a scorched finger using that if you're using it regularly. So I just want to quickly look at the internals before we get to the performance. And as usual with a lot of these gaming laptops, there are a few upgradable components on each of these. Now getting inside of these systems is relatively simple. And once inside, both of these have two upgradable DDR5 RAM slots, and both have two M.2 PCIe 4 SSD slots. And the good news is both suppliers do populate them with PCIe 4 SSDs, so there's no problems with the speeds on the SSDs on these drives. Now one advantage that the Legion has that the Alienware doesn't is that the Legion does provide heat sinks for both the SSDs, even though you've only got one installed. Now Dell, being tight as usual, only supply the heatsink on the drive that you've got installed. So you'll only have two heat sinks if you order a 2-drive configuration. Fortunately, it's quite easy to pick yourself up a copper plate from Amazon or eBay if you do get yourself a second SSD. We've got plenty of videos on that, and I will put it in the description below. Now one other area that the Legion wins is that it's actually got a socketed Wi-Fi card, whereas the Alienware X17 has a soldered on Wi-Fi card, so you cannot change the Wi-Fi on this model. Now looking at the cooling solutions, both these systems have vapor chambers, and they've both got upgraded thermal compounds because of the actual heat generated by the CPUs in both these machines. Now where they differ, the Legion has the standard 2-fan configuration, pumping the hot air out the back of the machine, whereas the X17 R2 has a 4-fan system. As we've seen in the past, it does do very well for this slim laptop. But now let's get to the performance and see how both of these do actually perform. Now as we mentioned earlier on, the Legion has the newer and higher powered 12900HX CPU, whereas the X17R2 has the 12900HK with less cores. And you can see straight away when we look at some of the performance benchmarks that the Legion does take quite a CPU lead over the Alienware X17. In Cinebench R23, which is a very heavy and long CPU test, we got over 2,000 points more on the Legion than that X17. So definitely if you really are looking for the ultimate CPU performance, this Legion is the way to go. Also looking at Geekbench 5, which is a shorter test but shows you the burst performance, you've got a much better single core score and multi-core score on the Legion than you do on that X17. So you're paying a massive premium for this CPU, but it could very well be worth it if you know that you've got that workload. Now when we start moving to some of the GPU synthetic benchmarks, running Time Spy, this is where it actually does get a lot closer together. Now, obviously the CPU scores are slightly better on the Legion, but when we look at the graphics scores, they're actually incredibly similar. And that's because both these machines have a 3080 Ti with 175 watt TGP. Now moving over to Firestrike, again, CPU scores are better than the Legion, but surprisingly we've got a better GPU score on the X17R2 than the Legion. When we're moving into some of the gaming benchmarks, Looking at Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the scores were actually very similar between these two models. There was 1 frames per second difference between these two, which could be just a margin of error. So when you're actually gaming between these two machines, you're really not going to notice the difference. But if you are going to be using a lot of CPU rendering or anything that's heavily CPU bound, you will see that increased performance on the actual Legion. Now, talking about gaming, obviously these are gaming laptops and both are great to game on. Now, with regards to the actual temps of these machines, I would say the Legion does a very slightly better internal temperature jobs on the actual CPU and GPU than the actual Alienware X17 R2. But it's very different when we talk about the external temperatures. When you're actually on a long-term gaming session, that X17 R2, the keyboard and palm rest remains incredibly cool, leading to a very comfortable long-term gaming experience. Whereas when we look at the Legion, unfortunately, being a very tiny, small chassis, the top deck, palm rest and keyboard do really heat up over time. And this is really noticeable. You will get sort of sweaty fingers on the WASD keys on any long-term gaming sessions. Now, looking at the fan noise of both these machines, the two are very similar. When we're looking at balance mode, they're both about 47, 48 decibels, which is very comfortable sound. And when we push it up to the actual performance mode, the Legion's very slightly lower at just over 50 decibels. And the Alienware X17 R2 is 52 decibels. But this is just a constant whoosh of air, so neither of these are unpleasant to game in its high performance mode. Now, with regards to battery life, both of these being 12th generation Intel processors, we know straight away the battery life isn't going to be great. Now, the X17 with its 4K panel, and 4K are also known to eat the batteries, we got just over 4 hours and our usual 200 nit brightness YouTube streaming over Wi-Fi test. Now, with the same settings and tests on the actual Legion, we actually got 4.5 hours, and probably most of that could be contributed to the lower power screen on this machine. Now, neither of these are great results, and this is low use as well. If you start utilising those CPUs, the battery life is going to be plummet. So if your priority is going to be battery life on a gaming laptop, you need to be really looking at a Ryzen model. The battery life is far better on Ryzen than it is on Intel. And a couple of other points just worth mentioning. Both of these laptops are power delivery capable, so you can use a USB-C charger, not necessary to game on because it is massively throttled down, but if you want to be working away and you don't want to take the big power adapter, you can certainly use a smaller USB-C on the go. And that leads me to the next point, and that is the power adapter of these two laptops. Dell finally re-engineered the actual 330 watt power supply this year and have produced a really small compact power supply compared to last year's absolutely mammoth brick. Unfortunately, Lenovo are still using their very large 300 watt power supply, and although it is very slim, so quite easy to put in a bag, it's massively heavier and bigger than the X17's new designed power pack. So there we go, these are two amazing laptops. I love both of these machines and I'm hard pressed to choose which one I would pick over each of them. Now personally, I do prefer a 7-inch laptop, so I would probably go with the X17 just because I love that slightly bigger screen. I don't understand why Lenovo don't offer a 17-inch Legion 7, because I think there's a massive market for 7-inch, especially in the gaming laptop sector. You want the biggest screen you can get because these are desktop replacement machines. But with that said, I can't deny that this Legion 7i is probably better value for money. The performance is phenomenal, especially considering how compact this is compared to the Alienware. You've got a better processor with a 12900HX. The performance and the cooling is stunning for this chassis. And on top of the performance, it's a great all-round laptop. A good keyboard with secondary backlit functions, which the Alienware doesn't have. We've finally got a fingerprint reader this year, but I do wish that it had Windows Hello facial recognition. And the 16x10 500 nit screen is the icing on the cake, making it a great all-round package. And it's much more portable than a 7-inch gaming laptop, so if portability is your thing, this is definitely the way to go. But swinging back in the Alienware side, you do get that Windows Hello facial recognition. I personally prefer the build quality and the actual design of the X17, and I love typing on this keyboard. I don't like the fact that the secondary functions aren't backlit, and I don't like the way that they've crushed the actual cursor keys into the keyboard, but typing on this laptop is got to be the best experience on any gaming laptop out there. Plus you have this 4K 120Hz screen, which is incredible, and they also have a 1080p 360 or 480, and they've just introduced a 1440p version, which I believe is coming to this in all the regions soon for the X17. So there's plenty of options when you're configuring your X17, whereas with the Legion, there will be the mini LED coming, but it's still not available. Otherwise, you're stuck with a 16x10, 2560x1600 screen, which is still a good screen. So that's my thoughts of these two machines. As always, would love to know what you think. Which would you pick out of these two? Please tell me also why. I love hearing your opinions. Certainly helps me when I'm obviously reviewing these laptops. And as always, thank you for watching.